Hi BookTube, I'm here with another video in my 12 books for 2021 series, and today I'll be talking about comics. And these are 12 comics I want to read in 2021, and I'll be going down by month. And yes, I'm making my monthly TBRs ahead of time. I find that monthly TBRs really work well for me. And I'm doing another project to make it a bit more exciting than just kind of having these books on the shelves. So these 12 comics are also in addition to me wanting to finally finish Fables. I think I'm on like, oh, I can't remember what issue. I'm well into the series, like well into it. There's not a lot left for me to finish. And I want to finally say that I have read Fables. If you don't know, Fables is about all those fairy tale creatures and characters and everything are real, and they have been exiled from their lands into the mundane world, into our world. And the Fables comics follows them as they kind of deal with that, at least in the beginning. Things get way complicated when you're as far in as I am. I should preface this by saying these comics are completely randomly chosen. There were no preferences for what I was going to read. I just know that I had these comics and I wanted to read them, so I was just going to choose random numbers and read the according comic. My initial goal is that I want to read at least the first issue, if that's the case, or the first volume, if that's the thing that I got it in. And if I want to continue and read further volumes and further issues, then I'll do that. But the initial goal is just to finish either the first volume or the first issue, depending on the comic. So, in January, I want to read The Amazing Adventures of Jules, at least Volume 1, by Emile Bravo, and this was published by Europe Comics. It's about a young boy who gets selected to go on an expedition to Planet Alpha and sneaks his guinea pigs on board. This seems like a very homey, heartwarming kind of tale, kind of funny. I think it's maybe aimed at middle grade, and it has that kind of Rin Tin Tin feeling. If you know the Rin Tin Tin comics, when I was looking at the art, I was like, that kind of reminds me of Rin Tin Tin. I want to read this. A lot of these are actually like cover picks, as is a lot of the cases with me when it comes to comics. The art on the cover is really fascinating and draws me in. I'll be more likely to pick it up and read it. In February, I want to read Road to Perdition by Max Allan Collins and Richard Piers Rayner. This was published by DC. It's a crime noir. A man set on revenge against the Irish mob after they murdered his family. This was actually made into a movie. I knew that Road to Perdition sounded familiar. When I found it was a comic first, I was like, sure, I'll read it. I love crime comics for some reason. That seems to be a favorite genre there. In March, I want to read 27, and they're called sets actually because it's about music. So set 1 is the goal, and if I want to continue on, I'll read set 2. This is by Charles Soule and Renzo Podesta, published by Image Comics, and it's about the 27 Club. If you don't know what that is, it's all the musicians who died at 27. Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and we follow 27-year-old Will Garland, who is a famous rock musician with a neurological disorder, and he's trying to make it to 28. So he doesn't become part of the 27 Club. In April, I want to read Hedra by Jesse Lonergan, and this was published by Image Comics. And this is actually a wordless comic, so that will be interesting to look at. This is about a lone astronaut leaving an Earth ravaged by nuclear war. And I thought, first of all, wordless, and then a space adventurer, and this lone astronaut, all those topics kind of seem really interesting to explore without words. So I look forward to reading that in April. In May, I want to read The Nightly News. The Anniversary Edition is the copy I have, by Jonathan Hickman, and this was published by Image again. You'll see that I really like Image Comics. This is about the news, and there's protests, and there's cults, and there's revolution, and it sounds a lot like 2020. And I didn't want to read more than that because it seemed to kind of go into spoiler mode. I like my descriptions of books to be vague. I don't like to know a lot before I go into a book, so you notice that my descriptions are kind of very short and vague here. In June, I want to read You Have Killed Me by Jamie S. Rich and Joelle Jones, and this was published by Oni Press. This is another crime noir. We follow Private Eye, whose past is coming back to haunt him, and the art is what grabbed me here. Kind of looks kind of old style. In July, I'm going to be doing a Batman month. I have 5 comics that I want to read. There are Batman Ghosts, Batman Gothic by Gaslight, Batman Night Cries, Batman Tales of the Demon, and Batman Blind Justice, all published by DC, obviously. So Ghosts is by Sam Keith. It seems like a ghost is killing the homeless people of Gotham, and it's a villain that Batman's never seen before. Some of these are older, and they're all the collected works, so that's just what I'm going by here. Gotham by Gaslight is by Brian Augustine, Mike Mignola, and others. And it's Batman in the Victorian era, and we have Batman versus Jack the Ripper, which just sounds fascinating, because is Jack the Ripper going to be able to outwit Batman? I want to find out. Night Cries by Archie Goodwin and Scott Hampton. This one came with like a whole bunch of warnings. They're just like, be aware that this is tough. And this is about child abuse, and Batman gets accused of killing the child abuser when he catches him. So, whew. The art on that looks fantastic, and I'm really intrigued. We have Tales of the Demon by Dennis O'Neil, Neil Adams, and others. And this is just a collection of some of the early Ra's al Ghul stories, which is, you know, the famous Batman villain. So just thought that would be an interesting thing to see. I don't think I've read any Batman comics that feature Ra's al Ghul, so that'll be a first. And lastly, Blind Justice, which also had this really interesting cover, and this is where Batman gets accused of treason. So he's on death row and trying to clear his name. In August, I want to read Kabuki, and this one I specified, I want to read all the volumes, volumes 1 to 7, by David Mack, and there's different publishers. Every website I looked up had a different publisher for this, so it seems like Marvel, Dark Horse, and Image are all ones that are credited with printing this comic. So in 2020, I accidentally read Kabuki Volume 4 without realizing that it was in the middle of the series, and I loved it. The art is so cool, the story is fascinating, and when I found out that there were other ones, I was kind of like, oops, but like also yay, because now there's more of this world to explore. And this is about a spy who's just struggling with her identity. In September, I want to read Mind Management, or Mind MGMT. I'm pretty sure it's Mind Management though. And I got the omnibus edition, and that's by Matt Kint, and it was published by Dark Horse. A bunch of people on a plane lose their memories. Like the whole plane, everyone on the plane loses their memories. And a journalist who kind of becomes this spy discovers this mind management top secret program pitting on by the government through all this. So it sounds like another kind of crime or crime adjacent graphic novel. October, I'm going to be trying to read some spooky books, but not too spooky, because I get scared easily. So I'll be reading Severed by Scott Snyder. It looks really scary. I'm hoping it's not too bad. Comics I can find not as scary as reading, because it's not your imagination filling in the gaps there. You kind of have the images. Anyways, this is by Scott Snyder, Scott Tuft, and Attila Futaki, and it's published by Image. This is actually set in 1916, and it's a horror comic, and the way they described it is a man with sharp teeth and a hunger for flesh. So it's, I'm guessing, a kind of vampire-ish graphic novel. In November, I want to read Buck Godot, and this seems like a really weird comic. Put out by Phil Foglio, Cecilia Constantini, and Julianne Sgesny from Studio Foglio. And it's described as Gun for Hire. Buck Godot takes place in the future on an anarchic planet called New Hong Kong. And it just kind of seems, again, crime related as well. Those tend to be the comics I gravitate towards. Lastly, in December, I want to read Her Bark and Her Bite by James Albom, and this was put out by Top Shelf Productions. And I picked this up just because of the art style, to be honest. It's about an artist who falls in love with a socialite, but then she starts losing his attention and affection when he gets a pet pug. So just a rather interesting topic there. So those are all the comics I plan on reading next year. Let me know if you plan on reading any comics. If you've finished the Fables comics, does it end satisfactorily? And thank you for watching.